In this video, I share 5 things that you should consider doing before, during, and after a first date in order to make it an enjoyable experience. So, first dates can come with all sorts of jitteriness and nervousness, the first date jitters. And so that can sometimes take a little bit of the fun out of it. And I would like to share a few things that can help it be a more or a less anxiety provoking experience and hopefully a more enjoyable one. Because the goal in dating is to have fun and enjoy it as much as possible. The reality is you're going to have more no's than yeses in terms of who you're interested in continuing to date and who's interested in continuing to date you. And so it's not about putting a whole bunch of pressure on every date that you go on. It's about enjoying the experience for what it is. Meeting a new person, having interesting conversation, trying out a new place or a new activity. So ideally, you want to be safe and have fun. So here are some things that can help with that. First things first, Google them. Whatever information you have about the person, type it into the good old Google and see what comes up. You may have their first and last name. You may have only their first name, but if you know their profession, it might be easy enough to look that up. You likely, just from an online dating profile, have a first name, a city and state, potentially a profession. And in messaging or talking with the person, you can get information like a last name or kind of more details about their life that you're able to put into Google. Also, it's never a bad idea to go to your state's judicial website and look up any court cases, which is public information, and it's a good place to start. This brings me back to a story. Let me tell you about a time where I broke my own rule and I didn't Google the person, and it turns out they committed an armed robbery. So I recall I was shopping when my best friend we were having a phone conversation, and she was like, let me Google this guy for you. I was like, yeah, do that. I didn't get around to doing that yet. And I had already gone on my first date with this person. And so she's Googling, and also my phone battery is completely, like, almost dead. And I hear her say something like, oh crap, I found something. I don't know, this was years ago, so I don't have the exact words, but it was clear that there was not good news on the other end of the phone, and my phone died at that moment. I put down everything that I had in my hands from the store, and I ran to my car and plugged my phone in to charge. As soon as I got the smallest bit of juice on my phone, I called her and I was like, what did you find? And she found like an article where he had like stood up a CVS for armed robbery, except that he had a fake gun, or he pretended to have a gun, but nonetheless got arrested for trying to rob a CVS. And yeah, I had to make an interesting phone call to say no thank you. So, cautionary tale. Google whoever you can. And let me be clear. People have made mistakes in the past that they are recovering from, and he happened to be someone who fell into that category. It was clear that he was getting his life on track. He was on a career path that he enjoyed. But for me at the time, one of my sensitive points was around like honesty based on some past experiences that I had had. And so I was in a very, it made me very nervous at that time to engage with someone who hadn't shared this information with me yet. And to be clear, I understand why he didn't, and he explained this, obviously, was that we had only had one date. That's hard information to share with somebody. And so I completely understand how everything happened and why it happened, but I also knew for myself at that time that was not something I was able to tolerate. So this goes into the whole idea of really knowing what your needs and desires are in a partner and in a relationship and in your dating experience at the current time that you were in. And that was something that I had to decide to distance myself from, because I just was not in a place to be able to tolerate it at that time. The next tip Or the next suggestion is that you meet in a public place. One, because safety. Don't meet people in dark alleys, regardless of how you meet them, online, in person, whatever. Just keep it public. And also, it helps to establish certain boundaries in the relationship when you're initially getting to know someone. So meeting up at someone's house can easily lead into maybe more sexual things that if you are not interested in that at that time, it's much easier to avoid that and set those boundaries when you are in public. So, meet, at a restaurant, or meet to do an activity, meet at a park to take a walk, any of the things, but do so in a public place in order to establish clear boundaries. Also, meeting in public where you might interact with other people, it allows you to vet someone to see how they interact with other people. So it's also helpful to kind of see somebody move in social spaces. So therefore, meeting in public can be helpful for safety reasons, for boundary setting, and for vetting how someone socializes and engages with other people. Something I strongly encourage is to keep it casual on the first date. Meet for coffee or a drink, or a walk in the park. This allows both people to get a feel for one another and to help them determine if they would like a second date, which can be more formal and be something where maybe you're having a full meal or engaged in something that keeps you together longer. By keeping it casual, you have an easy exit. If things aren't going so great, you can finish your coffee and go. You can finish your drink and get going. You can take a walk in the park and leave at any time. So I think it's always helpful to keep it casual on the first date. By no means do you have to. There's nothing wrong with having a more formal first date at all, but definitely if you're a little nervous, or if you're just someone who's trying to be as efficient with your dating as possible, I do think that having a casual first date can be very helpful. To this point of keeping it casual, and also a bit to the point of meeting in public and seeing how someone engages with other people, there were 2 dates in my past where I would have liked it to be a more casual meeting so that I could have escaped a little sooner. They were a little awkward, and not bad overall. I rarely have a bad date, because I think there's always something to take from it. But it was clear that I would not be seeing these people again, that I had no interest in doing so based on the interactions. One of them was the interaction with me. The person was a little awkward. And so we had like a tapas meal. So that went fairly quickly. But a cup of coffee or a drink would have been also like even better to just have that one drink and go. But it was also nice to have not had this full like formal meal to have to really sit through with this person. And in another situation, it was somebody who interacted very poorly with the wait staff at the restaurant. Completely turned me off, and I was no longer interested. And it turns out that like the person wasn't planning on eating anyway, so they didn't really order a meal, had like an appetizer. So it did shorten the date. But it also would have been nice to have just had a drink or coffee with that person and had been able to like leave. But then again, maybe I wouldn't have gotten to see them interact with the wait staff in the way they did, which was a very important part of my vetting process with this person. So, there you have it. Another great first date idea is to do something that's planned around an activity. So mini golf, zip lining, painting, axe throwing. I mean, I can go on and on. Anything where you're engaging in a task so it can help take pressure off the conversational piece of the interaction. It also just gives you guys something more to talk about. You can relate also more quickly because you are engaging in a joint activity. So you have feedback that you can give one another. It can be a great time to laugh and joke. So definitely planning an activity for a first date can be a very useful thing, and it can make everything just be a lot more fun. Also, even if you decide that you don't want to continue to see the person, then at least you had a fun experience in the process. And the final thing is to follow up after the date, especially if you're interested in having another date. So you text the person to let them know that you had a good time and you'd like to do it again. And on the note of follow-up text, I do have a dating conversation texting template available for free. So if you sign up for my email list, the link is in the video description, you can get that. And it gives you templates for how to communicate around dating situations, such as introductions with people, cancellations, a follow-up after a date, or letting them know that you're no longer interested. So definitely check that out. Okay, that's that. Those were a few things that I wanted to share about ways to make your first date as enjoyable as possible. It starts with the preparation and planning, but it also involves the things that you do during the date and the follow-up after the date. Okay, ladies, see you soon.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to click the link to join my email list. See you soon.